Hot Licks, the world leader in video and audio music instruction, now helps you be the best you can be with lessons by some of the biggest stars in music today. No matter what instrument you play, regardless of your level, you simply can't help but improve with these incredible jam-packed tapes. You'll find that Hot Licks videos are of the highest visual and audio quality and feature helpful items such as split screen, extreme close-ups, and even though you don't have to read music to learn from any of these tapes, most feature the music and tablature right on the screen. Don't be fooled by our imitators. Hot Licks is the original, and we are dedicated to always bringing you the best in tape musical instruction. Let the best make you better on the tapes that really teach. Hot Licks.
All right, now I want to get into talking about kind of the effect that country music has had on my style, and how I've sort of taken elements of country music and the phrasing and the popping effects I talked about before, the pedal steel licks, banjo rolls. How I've taken all that stuff and tried to apply it to other styles of music. I don't really consider myself a country player. I don't know what kind of player I am really. I guess it's a combination of a lot of different things. But like I said earlier, when I was growing up, there was a lot of country music around my house. My father listened to it a lot. Growing up in Kentucky, I guess that does make me a hillbilly at heart. But there was a lot of there was a bluegrass club that I went down to a lot, and I got to hear Doc Watson, Norman Blake, a lot of these guys, these incredible flat-picking players, acoustic players, and I just love that style of music a lot. There's a story I'll tell you about hearing a song on a record. There was a song in there called Sweet Little Lisa, and he got Albert Lee to play the solo on it, and I spent about a year trying to learn this solo off the record, which incidentally is probably the thing I would recommend more than anything else in terms of becoming a better musician, is actually developing your ear and trying to learn off of records. It's really fun when you figure something out, and it also really trains your ear. really helps you develop as a player. Anyway, I tried to figure out this solo for about a year. I spent almost a whole year trying to get it. And about the time I almost thought I had it, I figured out, I read in a magazine somewhere that Albert Lee was playing a B-string bender, which is kind of a pedal steel, built-in pedal steel effect on the guitar. But luckily I didn't know that for a year, so that I spent all that time trying to figure out how to play some of these licks. And what I want to do is show you some of the ways that I've come up with this and how I think about it when I do it, and hopefully get you started down that road so you can develop your own use for these licks. So I'm going to play some stuff in A. And when I'll first of all show you a couple of kinds of licks I'm talking about up to speed, and then I'll break it down and explain how these all work. Infinite varieties of banjo and pedal steel things that you can do, and then if you want to turn the guitar up and have a little different attitude with it, they come out a little different. Fun stuff. So let me try to slow all this down and start with what I think of as kind of the basic principle to getting a handle on pedal steel licks on guitar. I want to do all this out of A, in essentially an A 7th chord, which, if you know your modes, that's the Mixolydian mode. So let me start with a descending passage. It's really helpful when I think of this. When I'm doing pedal steel licks, I usually stay on a couple of adjacent strings. So I'm going to show you on the 1st and 2nd string a descending pattern. And the pattern is... I still can't play it quite right, but anyway, let me show you what I'm doing there. On the top string, with my 1st finger, I'm always using my 1st finger. I'm just starting on an E. And going down the Mixolydian scale, which is actually is a D major scale. So that note moves down. It's just straight down the scale. Now, depending on the interval or what is required, I'm usually using my 2nd or 3rd finger to fret the note on the 2nd string. So the first lick would be, and because this note, that's a half step up from this note, it's just going to be a small bend. Now we move down to the 2nd position. This note here, C sharp to B, is a full step, so you have to bend the note. You have to start the note bent up higher. So the key to this whole thing is to be able to recognize the right interval, being able to see the shape figure and see where the notes in the scale are, which comes back to my whole what I was talking to you earlier about learning the notes on the fingerboard, getting comfortable with the major scale, and starting to be able to see these shapes. So then we're going to move down. The next note down on the top string is here, it's C sharp. Then you have to use your 2nd finger to, you're going to bend a whole step from B to A. Move the same pattern down 2 frets. Then you start on A here. Then it's G here. You're fretting the E here, but you've got it actually bent up a whole fret. gets harder as you get down the neck because the tension on the strings increases. So let me break it down one more time for you. On the top string, you're just going. And on the bottom string, the lower string, the second string, you're going. So on the bottom string, you're doing the same thing with the scale. You're moving down the scale. All you're doing is you're bending up to the note, and you want to make sure the note you start the bend on is a note of the scale. In other words, you would not, in A7, you wouldn't want to start a bend on a C. It changes the key. So I'm trying to explain this as clearly as possible, but I think if you think about it and take a look at this, you'll see what I'm doing here. Once again. So that's the basic principle behind how you do this. You can also, when you get a handle on that, then you can start adding other notes into the pattern. This stuff comes in steps, you know, it's kind of small steps, but it's really, really fun to work on and really, really cool. So take your time with it and be patient, and you will get a handle on it. Another thing I like to do is double stop bends. Pretty much the first thing I told you about was, you know, we're hitting single notes and bending one note at a time. You can also take two strings and bend those as well. And the easiest place I found to do that is on the middle strings of the guitar. It's very hard to do it on the high, very high E. You can do it on the, Arlen Roth can do it on the low strings, but for the most part, what I do is the middle strings. Once again, in the key of A, if you're in A7. And what I'm doing here is I'm using my fourth and third finger, and I'm bending with my fourth finger, I'm bending the second string up a half step, and the third finger bends the third string up a whole step. So this isn't as hard as it sounds. Really, the tension of the guitar strings really allows you to do this. The main thing is kind of developing the strength in your little fingers. But once again, those sounds would be. Now, if I went down and I wanted to do a double stop bend in this position, and I'm still in A7, the notes I would want to go to are. So I have to bend both strings up a full fret. It's harder to do. If you do it fast enough, they won't know that you're not exactly on pitch. But that's another thing you can do. Still in the key of A, another good position to do a double stop is you're basically playing the 4 chord, the D. It's an F sharp and a D. You can, you know, for a bluesier thing, if you want to get kind of the minor third in, you can. You can also do double stop bends with your first finger. I like doing that with vibrato, especially in blues-based stuff. And you can combine the blues and the country stuff together. It's a really nice effect. Another double stop bend is to once still in the key of A, play a G with your fourth finger and a D with your third finger, and just bend the third string up. And you can use that as kind of the foundation for a lot of different, you can work off that lick in a lot of cool ways. And in a sense, I'm keeping a pedal tone with my fourth finger here. So double stops. You can also get into bending chords, doing pedal steel licks with chords, three or more notes, and something I like to do a whole lot. If you were to do it with the top three strings, I generally like to do it where I have the note that's going to be bent on the third string, something like this. And once again, listen to the difference. If I just take a pick and do it, I can get that kind of rake effect. Now, if I take pick and fingers and do it, it's a whole different sound. So I like to keep that in mind whenever I'm playing. Actually, I don't really keep this in mind. I just do it. But if you're just learning this style of playing, it's nice to know that you have these different options and you can be thinking about it. Another way I like to play, well, let's go back once again on the top three strings. You can do an infinite variety off that kind of lick, and I like to do this a lot, where you're bending the low note and you're alternating the top notes a little bit. That's kind of cool. You're doing pull-offs there with your little finger. So you're actually raking this A triad. Then you bend it up without striking it. So that's pretty cool. I like that. I'm teaching myself while I'm trying to help you. You can move to the middle strings and do the same thing. Another variety of this lick here. Let's move to the key of B. A variety of that would be to play the B and the F sharp with your first finger, and then you play a D sharp with your third finger, and you're going to bend the D sharp up a half step to the 4. You can do some really cool things with this form. And there you're utilizing hammer-ons and pull-offs and popping techniques, all that stuff together in one lick. What I did there was just take the same lick up a fourth, and you can have you can imply, just because you can have a pedal situation where you're just playing a B chord. And you can take the same form move it up a fourth, and you can still play it over the 1, but it's the same shape. This is exactly the same shape. I'm just moving it up. But once again, in the key of B, I know that these notes are in the scale that I'm hearing in my head, so I don't have to think about it. It's the 4 chord, it's the 1 chord, it's the 5 chord. I know that those notes are in that thing, and after having done it enough, I know what it's going to sound like. But from a visual perspective, it kind of frees your mind up just to be able to see the shapes on the fingerboard and reach for one of these licks and know that even if it's not, tonality-wise, it's not exactly what you had in mind, rhythmically you can make something really cool out of it. So keep that in mind. One other pedal steel thing which is really cool to do is when you bend with your first finger. It'd be a bend that would bend down. A lot of different ways to do this. The easiest way for me to show you, and kind of another basic foundation for this style of playing, would be for you to be in the key of E. And we're going to fret the B and the E with our third and fourth fingers here. And then we're going to use our first finger on the F sharp here. And we're going to bend this note here, the F sharp, up a full step to the third of E, which is G sharp. So that's the basis for a lot of licks that would originate around the first finger pull down thing, and you can do some neat things here. That's just a descending bass, starting on the B with your third finger. You just move it down like that. You can take that basic idea, still in the key of E, and do something like this, where you take your second finger with your second finger on the fifth string, fretting an E, a B on your fourth finger, little finger on the fourth string, and you use once again your first finger to pull down, but this time we're only going to pull up a half step because we're playing a C sharp. We're going to bend up to D. So those are a lot of different pedal steel ideas. Let's talk about banjo ideas. This basically, once again, is kind of a percussive thing with the way I think about it. I mean, you could play, while some of these licks aren't necessarily just banjo licks, I hear a lot of banjo players doing them. A lot of things I like to do. Where you do to the top three strings, and you're once again doing a rake, a roll kind of thing. You can also do the same thing. That's essentially they were playing E7. That's E, B, and a C sharp up to a D. You can do the same thing on the fifth, fourth, and third strings. A million varieties of this, you know. Another banjo technique I like to use, I kind of think of them as descending pull-offs. You can also make them ascending pull-offs, but it seems to be easier to make them descending pull-offs. And in similar fashion to the pedal steel stuff, where you kind of have to visualize the intervals, I do the same thing. Let's do it in A again, like over an A7. Let me show you what these notes, what these licks sound like. I particularly like the ones on the top strings, and what you do is you strike the note on the first string, pull it off so that the note with your first finger sounds, and then strike the note on the second string. And you can make them more banjo-like if you use your middle finger to strike the first note. So all we're doing is playing down the scale, and the key being that all the notes you play have to be in the A7 scale. So if you know that scale, you're home free. You know you can see it up and down the fingerboard. And you can take those notes and mix them, kind of mix the order they come in, to interpolate the rhythm, whatever. So that's a fun thing you can work on. It's a lot of possibilities within that, a lot of different ways to do it. You can move it to other strings. You can take the same principles and do that. All these country things might seem really foreign to you if you've never played them before, but it's really a fun thing to work on, and when you start getting a handle on it, it becomes a lot more fun. So I think you'll find that if you practice it for a while, it slowly will become part of your vocabulary, and it won't be quite the headache that it is initially, but it's worth the effort. So now I'd like to get into talking about some blues stuff. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think if we do another tape, we'll spend more time on blues, but I do really want to touch on some basic things that I like to do, and really kind of concentrate on stuff that is sort of based on what players in Austin, kind of an Austin blues thing. Talk about a couple of rhythm things in particular, some styles that I like to use. And the first one that I want to show you is something like this. So what I'm doing here is, if you notice, it's a very percussive kind of thing. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just, you see the motion of my right hand, it's pretty steady the whole way. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting a note or a chord on the downstroke, and then I'm muting all the strings on the upstroke. Occasionally I'll let a note ring through, but for the general principle is to play the chord, so that's a really cool, it sounds really big, if you're playing like in a three-piece situation, or you can combine that kind of stuff to where you're almost playing lead and rhythm at the same time. It's really, really effective. But I think it's something, once again, that you have to develop a feel for, and it also involves muting with your left hand occasionally. And also, depending on what sound you're getting or what inversion you're going for, you're going to be muting different strings. But that's something you can work on. It just takes some practice. But once again, let me play the first thing I did for you. You see that on the downstroke is when you really hear the note sound. That's a pretty cool rhythm style that you hear a lot of Texas players use a lot. Another rhythm style that that's kind of indigenous to Austin is something like Jimmy Vaughn uses a lot, and it's more of a rock and roll style, actually. It's kind of a Chuck Berry thing, but when you put it in a blues context, it's really effective. And when I'm talking about something like this. So you're really playing kind of a Chuck Berry style rhythm almost, but the thing that makes it different is the attitude and the way you strike the strings. It's almost all downstrokes. So that's another thing that's another style that I play a lot, like to use. And in case you're not really familiar with this, I'll show you very, very briefly. You're in the key of A, and you're fretting the sixth string with your first finger and the fifth string with your third finger. But really the percussiveness is, you know, the real effect of this whole thing is coming from your right hand. So that's a very a fun thing to do. When I talk about blues, I would. It's a funny story. The first guitar teacher I ever had, the first lesson I ever had from him, he brought over 3 records, and they were B.B. King Live at the Regal, Magic Sam West Side Soul, and the first Paul Butterfield Blues Band record. And I feel like this is really one of my big lucky breaks in life to have this stuff laid on me at an early age. Blues, for me, is such, I mean, even though I didn't really talk about blues players that much before, the players like Albert King, B.B. King, Freddie King, Albert Collins, all those guys really epitomized to me how powerful music could be, and were really huge influences on my playing. And I would suggest, if you want to get a handle on the style that I'm talking about doing here, you really would spend a lot of time checking out some of these players, and also check out the first couple of Roy Buchanan records. And that he plays a lot of blues stuff on that, but he really incorporates some of these more country things into them, and it gives you a really good idea of kind of how you can combine these styles and how I was influenced by him, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I also want to talk about, while we're talking about Albert Collins and Albert King and these guys, I want to point out how those guys really influenced my lead style of playing. In addition to the rhythm stuff, I think when you hear me play, if you know my playing, you'll really hear a lot of stuff that sounds like it's blues bass. I tend to have changed it up, mixed it up with other stuff, and put it in a different context, but when I play stuff, like I mean, to me, it's really Albert King. I've stolen Albert King, or I'm stealing a combination of Albert King, Albert Collins. These guys all had a really huge effect on my playing, and I think that the expressiveness that blues players have is really something that I've tried to bring to all different styles that I play, whether it's country or I'm playing, regardless of the type of thing. I think if there's a vibe and an emotional content in the best of blues music that I try to bring to the other stuff as well. And I think you can think about that in your playing. You can try to incorporate that quality as well, and really it gets back to the whole the bending and the vibrato and how you personalize your style. So let me play a couple licks and just show you how you can vary all this stuff once again. I'm just trying to show you there, when you can bend a note, you can take one note and milk so much out of it by bending it in different degrees. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the guitar. You've got that. You've got the ability to do that. And once again, when I do that, I like to really stress the dynamic range that's available to you. You know, you can really change the mood by how hard you attack the strings. You know, you can create quite a different mood by varying these different things. For instance, that kind of gives you one vibe, a much more aggressive, you know. Is a whole nother thing. So it's really nice to take advantage of the full range of the guitar, you know, as opposed to just playing really loud all the time, really quiet. You know, experiment. Check it out. I really want now to spend some time talking to you about my whole approach to other styles of rhythm playing, the kind of things that I did when I played with Joe Ely, and what I learned from playing with Joe Ely. It's kind of stuff that people point out to me they think is my rhythm style that they recognize. And it basically came about when I played with Joe. We were essentially a three-piece band for most of the time I was with him, so I always had to find ways to make my guitar sound bigger and really full and try to fill the thing out. And what I ended up doing was kind of adopting a style that had very few thirds in it, a lot of open strings, and trying to combine that with the right tone on the guitar. So I'd like to show you a couple of the basic shapes that I use for like more rock rhythm guitar kind of stuff. And I want to do them all out of the key of B so that I can show you some different things. I tend to do a very similar thing, just depending on what octave I want to do it into, where I play the root and the 5 and 1. So that's B, F sharp, and B again. And as opposed to playing it like just a big bar chord, I tend to fret all the strings individually and use a combination of pick and finger so that I can get a whole lot out of one little thing. And there, essentially what I'm doing is doing kind of banjo-style rolls, finger-picking things, and the only note I'm changing in that particular chord is I'm letting the F sharp change to an E on the 4th string. So you can take that whole form and move it up an octave to this position. And once again, you've got your B, your F sharp, and your B here. Root 5, and root again. If you want to play a similar thing, but the same kind of thing, using it in a different position, you can do it like this, where you're fretting the B and the F sharp with your little finger at the same time, and then the B and the F sharp here at the same time with your first finger. And now the key of all these chords is there's no third in it. It's much more aggressive and to the point, and it also kind of allows you to interpret the tonality of the song however you want, whether it be more major or more minor. So I kind of developed this whole thing working with Joe Ely, and then when I worked with John Mellencamp, on the first full record I did with him was called Whenever We Wanted. We used a lot of the same kind of voicings. He really wanted to make a big guitar record, and ended up using this really similar style of rhythm playing, you know, and stuff like. that, you know. Those big kind of sounding things. When we did the second record with John, Human Wheels, he wanted to change that sound, and we went back to a lot more acoustic instruments, and I used a lot of different, you know, baritone guitars, acoustic guitars, a National metal guitar, and then when you start bringing all those other instruments in, I ended up having to change my electric approach a little bit. Some of those big fat chords don't always work if you're trying to leave space for other instruments. So I really, when I'm playing rhythm guitar, I really try to evaluate the situation, how many, you know, what size band it is, what kind of sonic space I'm trying to fill up. Those are all things that I think about when I determine what kind of voicing I want to play, or what approach I'm going to take, and to some extent, especially what tone I'm going to pick, because you can play some of the stuff with a very clean tone, and it doesn't take up near as much space within the context of the band. Another thing I want to show you real quick is a lick. This is in C, and it utilizes some of the same forms I just showed you, but it also has some finger picking in it, and it goes like this. And that's a lick from a song called Heart of Steel, which I wrote with Joe Ely and Will Sexton. We put on Will's first record. And a couple of concepts in that which I really like a lot are the idea of I'm picking the first part of it. And essentially that chord there is a B-flat chord, but it keeps the C in it from the previous chord, which I really like that sound a lot. Then it goes to a finger picking thing. So that hybrid stuff, the combination of all my styles of playing, I really like doing that. Another thing is I use a lot of open tunings, especially when I record. I record a lot with open tunings, and for instance, like an open G tuning, where you could approximate it on guitar by getting rid of the 6th string and tuning the A string down to G. So you've got. I really like that sound, but when you play live, you can't always tune your guitar differently. So I kind of developed a way to fake my way through an open tuning sound. So I've tuned the guitar back up to standard. And essentially you can make that sound if you just use your, in this instance, use your 3rd finger to mute the 5th string. Now, that's great for the first position, but if you want to be able to move that up the neck, what I do is I use my little finger to play the bass note. So we'll go up in here, we'll play a C chord. The little finger plays the C, and it also mutes the A string. So you hear that's a dead string. So you're just playing a C triad here, G, C, E. You can also mute the top string with your little finger as well. You can also try to fret it with your little finger if you want to do that. It's kind of hard to do, and depending on the guitar you've got, it works better at times. But that's just a really effective way to have an open tuning sound. Another thing I like to do is just play a chord and use a little bit of the tremolo bar on at the end. It's kind of a Bigsby effect. But, it's a really nice effect, especially if you have some echo on your sound. Now I think I'd like to talk about my some more lead concepts, and it's almost kind of when you talk about improvisation and playing solos. I really have to kind of come back to the whole emotional aspect of it, like what is it you're trying to convey? I mean, you're having a conversation. It's kind of a hard thing to talk about at times, but the way I learned to play lead was basically by copying records, copying other people. When I was starting out learning how to play, really helped to develop my ear, and by making mistakes, hear the difference between certain, the subtle differences in the right and the wrong way to play a lick that somebody was playing on the record. Really taught me a lot about ways I could change the emotion I was trying to convey, or just really opened up my ear quite a bit. My tendency to, when I play solos, is to I always like stuff that's really unpredictable and doesn't sound like it's really thought out. I really don't like thought out stuff when I'm trying to be when I'm trying to convey excitement or a really strong emotional thing. So the players I've tended to gravitate toward do improvise a lot, and really, you could take as extreme as somebody like Miles Davis or John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, and then Jeff Beck at the same time. While his thing isn't that harmonically advanced, it doesn't seem to matter. He doesn't really care. I mean, he'll just flail at the guitar if that's what he wants to get out, and it always comes out really cool. I kind of developed this whole idea. I developed this idea a lot further working with Joe Ely when we played some songs that were. We played a couple of things like Letter to L.A., which were really, really long songs and really wide open and really slow and had a really full dynamic range. It allowed me to experiment a lot. And after a while, I got comfortable playing this stuff. What I would do is always try to play a totally different solo every night. Never play the same thing twice. And almost as a rule, I found if I tried to play it the same way, or if I had a really good night the night before and the next night I came back and said, well, I'm going to try that again, it was never as good, and it really lacked something. And I think what I learned from that is that, when you're improvising and you're playing solos, it's really an organic thing, and it's kind of predicated by what's happening at the moment, and so you have to be willing to really have an open mind and try to clear your thoughts. Think about doing your laundry or something, I don't know, but that's really something that I like to do, is to keep the palette wide open, the canvas wide open, and then kind of let whatever's happening pull me into it. So you could really, I would advise that you really spend a lot of time listening to records and the people you admire, and just kind of study the way they improvise and try to take their licks off of records. The last thing I want to get into is, my equipment and tone. Talk about tone a little bit. I think I've always gravitated towards a style that was kind of, a tone that was sort of organic. In that, by that I mean not a lot of effects. I tend to like a lot of vintage gear, or a lot of vintage bass gear. I just like when you play a guitar that you can, if you turn the guitar down, it'll clean up your sound, but it still remains bright. If you play harder, it'll make the amp break up more. A lot of times if you get into a big rack system or an amp that has a whole lot of gain built into it, you lose that lower dynamic. So my sound here that I've got set up is totally straight ahead, really. I'm just, I have a little booster pedal that I haven't been using at all, and a little bit of reverb on the amp. But if I turn my guitar about halfway up, it's really clear and ringy, and allows a lot of clarity between the notes. Whereas if I turn it all the way up, it gets a lot dirtier, and but I can still play softly and have some clarity in the notes. Whereas if I really step on it, it breaks up and it gets really punchy. And then I have just like a booster that I kick on for most of my solos. So I find that by using the volume knob and the right amp and the right guitar, it's really effective, and it allows me to really manipulate the instrument, the sound of the instrument, to the way I hear it. And I think what you'll notice is, too, that the sound itself is really in your hands. If I play acoustically, the sound that I hear sitting over my guitar is very similar from the sound that comes out of the amp. It has the same quality. So be aware of that. Really try to make your, practice without your amp, and make your guitar try to make it sound like you envision it sounding out of your amp. Guitar-wise, towards the Paul Reed Smith guitar. That's just my personal choice. You know, it's worked well for me, and I'm really used to it. It feels like home. So there's a million different variables you can get into when you talk about gear. But I think ultimately you want to find your voice, your tone, because that's what it's about, really. It's establishing your own identity. So I hope all the stuff we've talked about today has really helped you understand what I do and how I got to be where I am in terms of developing a style, and I hope that it helps you out. And thanks for joining me.